thinking about accessibility and accommodations and solutions for your students, what are some of the creative ways that you've gotten buy-in?
One thing that I realized is the first thing you must do is identify the problem. But once you identify the problem, and I mean the teacher, I always try to work first with that teacher because she or he is the king or queen of how we want to guide that student in terms of their problem. Everyone have to buy into that problem. For example, if a child is having a reading difficulty, hopefully everyone, including the parent, understand that the child has some kind of reading difficulty. But then you have to look at motivation. When the previous speaker spoke about motivation, I mean, you can feel and sense the motivation in him. So we have to be able to put the fire in kids. And so even when you use Bookshare, always says start with a book that child is interested in. Sometimes be a little careful in presenting an academic book, like, oh, I don't want to be bothered with this. So put a fun book in front of them. And that selection process should always include the child. And also make sure the parent is aware of what you're using. So my biggest win is when people buy in to building that community and village.
The first thing that I make sure to do is that they've got their own account and that the parents have their account information and that their parents know how to operate the site. Because if they can do it at home, then they'll develop more independence than if they only do it at school.
So how do you get buy-in from your students? Because students have to take ownership in that technology.
Yeah, so I like to say we definitely want to empower students to have the choice, not just because they have in their accommodation that they need access to text-to-speech means that it'll be beneficial to them, because, you know, we want students that are able to use it, that want that type of technology. Some of them don't like it. For whatever reason, they don't want to listen to the book. So it's also about giving the power to the student and going over some of those features, like, okay, sitting down with them, showing them how to, the speech rate, showing them which voice is better for them. So it just throws that power back to them of, you know, them having that buy-in, them wanting to have this book read out loud because, you know, they can kind of relate to the voice, or the speech rate works specifically for them. So things like that. So, but not necessarily because they have that accommodation that they need this means that it's suitable for them.
When we think about educational equity, our platform Bookshare provides that. And so what it looks like on a day-to-day basis in the classroom, you may have a classroom of up to 20 or more students, and each one of those learners have their own specific needs. And so when we talk about students that may have an IEP or any other type of physical disability or learning disability, we have specific features to offer them that they can utilize at their own preference to kind of own their own learning, and also, again, have access to the same materials that everyone else has, but in a specific way that will empower them. So I think that's a great way to definitely incorporate buy-in or help people, students, teachers, and parents to own and really dive into Bookshare.
Also, positive communication, because I found that communication is probably the most important thing in getting buy-in from everybody. One of the things that I like to do with my students is to make a public show of their achievements. So communicating with their parents, letting them know what the students are achieving with the technology, communicating with their teachers, what the students are doing with me, with their technology, the skills that they're developing, getting excited about that in front of my students. Having my students have an opportunity to show off their work in front of their teachers or their peers or their parents or all of them, emailing team members and showing them work that the student has done with me using technology. I found that that is very helpful, because the more that the student finds out what they can do, I think the more invested they become in the use of their technology. I think they'd all like to operate it independently, but then the use of it in their classroom is another thing. So being very positive about that and giving them opportunities to show off just how good they are with it has helped a lot.
You know, what I have noticed is that the students enjoy video. So sometimes what I would do after they would read, they would actually have to act it out, perform what they have learned out of the book or what they have heard or listened to. And to me, I think about the multisensory approach to learning. Sometimes we don't know what's the best way. Is it visual, is it auditory, is it kinesthetic, things of that nature. So what we try to do is offer a multi-platform in terms of, maybe this is the best way for this child.
One thing that I think is highly effective is to, and it may sound very simple, but to model, actually teach and demonstrate to the students how to access the different formats of those texts. Also, being consistent, incorporating that in daily instruction. So whether it be a small group or just reading time, allowing students to access different texts if they're on leisure, once they're done with specific activities. I think that'll be a great way to get students to use it and more comfortable using it independently. And also to assign specific reading tasks to the students. So we have a book study that we have to do in class, allowing students to access that whenever it's their time to do their assigned reading.
Another thing is the students get to identify the color for the words that are being highlighted. So if they get to pick out the colors, that kind of gives them some buy-in. So they're looking at the colors, hearing the sound, and they're paying attention so it's visual attention.
So they have to be involved in the choices, both deciding what the technology is going to be that they use, also how they're going to use their literacy skills, and how they're going to incorporate that into the classroom. They have an awareness also that the way that they learn is different from the other kids. And so at that point, you just want good ways to get them the information. And if listening is the best way, then great. That doesn't mean you stop teaching the literacy skills if they need it, but it does mean that you give them new ways to feel like they are competent, that they are keeping up with their peers, that they can handle the same work that others are handling.